Hello. Hello, everyone. I guess no one can actually say anything. Hello. Very welcome to today's Intergenerational Dialogue, co-hosted by MenEngage Sonke Gender Justice and Yield Hub. My name is Somilam Jekula. I am the communications lead at the Yield Hub. And it's really good to have you all here today. This session is being held in recognition of International Youth Day or Youth Month that happened last month. That is under the theme of Youth Empowerment for Sustainable Futures. And the dialogue that we're having today will be focused on strengthening youth-adult partnerships for sustainable development. Before I start, I just want to make sure that the session is being recorded. So Alex, would you mind sorting that out?
It's being recorded, yes.
Awesome. Okay, so why does this matter? So this dialogue is important for conversations around how we achieve sustainable development goals. We know that young people are the future and are leaders today and in the future, but very often they become overlooked in conversations around how we achieve future goals. So we want to surface that in this dialogue and really bring out what the challenges are around such engagements between young people and adults, and really create opportunities for equitable partnerships in the conversations we create through this dialogue between youth and adults, and to learn from the real experiences that both young people and adults have in working together. So before we begin, just for quick housekeeping notes, today's session is a Zoom webinar. That means only the speakers that have been assigned today and the panelists will be visible on the screen. So as an audience, you will be able to interact in two ways. We have a Zoom Q&A box where we will have two guiding questions there that we will share with you. So please share your reflections and answers throughout the session, those two questions. So we'll revisit these later in the dialogue. You'll also have the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have for the panelists today or the dialogue speakers, and we will engage with them at the end of the session. To get us started, you can join the conversation on these questions. I think Alex, the comms associate at the Yield Hub, will launch them soon.
I've just
So
launched them.
Yes, so the two questions are, what is the biggest barrier you see to building equitable youth-adult partnerships, and what would you change first to make youth-adult partnerships more meaningful in your context? So yes, feel free to interact with that prompt, and we'll revisit your answers after the speaker dialogue. Just to check, is Richard, our keynote speaker, here?
Yes, Mila, I am here and ready for you all.
Awesome. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our keynote speaker, Richard Dzikunu. A lot of you may already be familiar with Richard as our action learning lead at the Yield Hub. He's a passionate advocate for youth leadership and gender equality. He brings extensive experience and knowledge in sexual and reproductive health and rights, youth empowerment, and intergenerational dialogues. So he will be opening the scene or setting the scene for this engagement. Richard was actually part of another intergenerational dialogue that we had in Senegal last year as part of the Wellbeing Summit that was hosted by Tostan. He helped conceptualize and moderate that dialogue that is also an inspiration for today's event. So his reflections really highlighted the power of a structured dialogue and why it's important to have these kinds of conversations. So we're really happy to have him presenting today, and we're really happy to have partnered with MenEngage and Sonke Gender Justice to bring this conversation to the broader public. So I'm delighted to hand it over to Richard to start us off with the keynote. Richard, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mila, and thank you to everyone here as well. I'm glad to be with you all, particularly joining the rest of our panelists and speakers for today. I'm also particularly glad to see some of our Action Learning members here, Emmanuel, Tracy, and some of the partners we've also worked with at MenEngage and Sonke Justice as well. I think, Mila, you said the scene very right, especially by reflecting on the Tostan event that we both had the opportunity to attend for the Yield Hub in Senegal. And for the first time when I was there, one of my reflections around what intergenerational dialogue really shifted and really deepened, because I saw for the first time a conference where within a session, there were both youth and adults. And when I say adult, there was a proper representation of youth-led organization, youth groups, young professional, middle age, and then older generations. And for older generations, you will see people including like chief imams, priests, other religious leaders, community leaders. Even at some point, a commissioner of the police for that region in Senegal showed up at that event. And so it was truly a representation of a younger and older generation. And how that dialogue and conversation took place in that room was really meaningful and productive. And I asked myself, wow, it's a typical and beautiful example of what an intergenerational dialogue could look like. Now, one may say, what went into that makes me say this is how it would look like? I saw young people who came to an event with their own views, perspectives, and how they wanted things to be done for them. So they clearly came, these were young people who first were clearly empowered and understood why they needed issues around their reproductive health and right, issues around, their access to sexual information to be decided, and how they even integrate and interact within the society to be done. These youth were well prepared, but the way they engaged with their adult allies were ways that I would say were very constructive in the sense that in a typical sometimes context, we are told that young people are supposed to be seen and not heard. That means you show up at the event, but you do not speak or disagree with your adult partners. That is your elders, your chief or traditional leaders. You do not disagree with them. But I saw young people who showed up in a space where they were super constructive in the way that they knew how to engage, to disagree, but in a respectful way and make their points across. And I saw adult allies who were also open to listen to where young people disagreed with them, but also understand and take responsibility that they are different generations. And so this disagreement do not mean that they cannot work together and they cannot listen to each other. And for me, that was really powerful, because a lot of times it's either I am right and you are wrong, or I have more experience than you, so listen to me. I am older than you, so I've seen more than you. But what I saw in this room were adult allies and young people who accepted that their differences and approaches was not wrong, but it's as a result of the generational gap that they have. However, they were willing to accept that these differences can then transform into opportunities. And so this really event at Tostan, which Mela shared and I started with, that makes me come to what an intergenerational dialogue should look like, or within our field that we all work, how should that look like? I think this would mean that we should first of all accept that the differences that both young and old have are good experiences that can inform decision-making. This decision-making may come from different perspectives, but in the end, the outcomes mostly are the same. Maybe the approach to doing things may be different, and it's important to respect how the older generation may want to do something and how the younger generation may want to do something. But if the goal is the same, allow each one to do what they want to do within their own cultural context, religious context, and in a way that makes them also feel that they are being part of the process. And so that was truly empowering for me when I saw that. Secondly, when we also come to intergenerational dialogue, one of the things that I also realized is the language barrier, in the sense that I don't know how to consider myself, whether I'm in a younger generation, older generation, or intermediate, but I've been a youth advocate for a long time in my life, now in a position of a young professional, working also with a lot of adult allies. And one of the things I realized is that when I get into a room, sometimes the kind of definitions that some young people may give, the kind of views they have may be different from mine. And the kind of definition that the adult generation also give could be different. But in the end, are we working on tagging each other with definitions and being politically appropriate? Or also we are working towards achieving the same goal? And I will give a typical example of why sometimes when it comes to intergenerational dialogue, or even dialogue between youth and adults, some people feel left behind. I was at an event, and I realized one of the challenges that came up was, why are we not engaging more young people within conversations? Why are we not having more adult allies within the room? And then immediately connecting what happened at Tostan in Senegal, I realized that if you are in a contest, and I was saying this event, it was organized in one European country, and immediately I was in that event and words like culture came up, or masculinity came up, or male allyship came up. Anything that sounded in a way that did not fit a certain language or context of a certain society, they found that it's not accepted. So one of the things that made me really begin to think about what intergenerational dialogue could also look like is around, when we talk about culture, it's very important that you work, when we are working within intergenerational dialogue, you work within people's culture, understanding, and the context. But in some aspects, people always feel like when we talk about culture is oppressive. Culture is not allowing people to be fully themselves, which could be true in some contexts. But it is very important that when you want to include a certain generation of people, you do not leave them out because of who they are and what they represent, but be open to constructively engage them and to understand why they do things in certain ways and to understand how improvement can be made, but not to go with a criticism approach. And I just realized that was also very important. So just to wrap up and to set a tone for the rest of our discussion, I would just say that for me, over the years, what I've really seen when it comes to intergenerational dialogue is that often we are all on the same page, just that we are approaching things differently. And so what will require is that we all want to actively listen to each other, be willing to understand each other. And sometimes understanding does not mean it has to make sense. Because if you were born in a different country and in a different context, I may do something that may not make sense to you, but understand that this is what represents me and respect that. That also becomes important because often we always want other people to fit into how we think and what we want things to be done. And that does not encourage intergenerational dialogue. Some of these things are hard to say, but it's also the truth. And finally, to say that intergenerational dialogue also requires processes. I've had a chance to work with institutions where, as a young person, I disagreed a lot on how, for example, young people should be compensated. I said, no, we have to compensate youth work. We have to make sure the youth who are coming for an event, they are prepared enough. We have to make sure that we are giving them proper accommodation to sleep in hotels, because if you are inviting a professor from a university and putting them in a specific hotel, giving them a specific stipend, why do you want to put a young person in a hostel? Their experience at that conference is because they are young, and that is all that matters. The experience of the professor is because they are a professor, so give all of them equal. And I've had backlash because some older generations, which are sometimes donors or more experienced allies in our field, don't understand this because in their time it wasn't done that way. Then what I realized was that instead of going at them and it becoming confrontational, I asked them, why can't this be done? Then they explained that, okay, if we have to pay the young person, they may not have a bank account, they may not have this, we would have to transfer the money this way. Then I work with them to set up the system and structures and get it done. So a lot of time when it also comes to the issue of intergenerational dialogue, particularly when in the area of programs, in the areas of institutional and systemic change, it takes time. And that means that where we hit a block and we get a no from our adult allies, we should ask them why and be willing to work through the processes and systems that can change to make them possible. So just to say that I encourage the rest of the group here to be as open as possible with the dialogue, and hopefully some of this reflection helps spark the broader debate for today. Thank you very much, Mila.
Thank you so much, Richard. So much food for thought. And I don't want to waste any more time before we move on to the conversation. So yeah, this was a great way to set the scene. I'm going to hand it over now to our moderator, Shabellah. Shabellah is the MenEngage Uganda Youth Coordinator and Regional Youth Steering Committee member. So she will be moderating the dialogue and continuing the facilitation for the rest of the session. Giving it over to you, Shabellah.
Well, thank you so much, Mila. Thank you so much for those powerful words, Richard. Once again, I'm Shabellah Nuwampeire. I'm from Uganda. I work with the Uganda Youth and Adolescents Health Forum. It's a youth-led SRHR-focused organization. And I'm honored to serve as your moderator today for International Youth Data Intergenerational Dialogue. I come into this role not just as a facilitator, but as someone who is deeply passionate about youth leadership and intergenerational collaboration. With my journey, this has taught me that when young people and adults work hand in hand, sharing stories, sharing power, sharing solutions, we create real and lasting change. So today, my role is to guide our flow, keep our energies alive, and most importantly, make sure that every voice is heard and valued in this space. So I'll go ahead and introduce our amazing dialogue speakers who will be leading us throughout the conversation today. First, we have Tracy Anyango. She's a convener of the Youth Alliance for Change, and she's a powerful youth advocate. She brings the life experiences of young people. Then next, we have Washington Mumbawarwo. Washington is the founder and an executive director of the Youth End Period Poverty Movement. He has a strong voice on menstrual health and rights. His work also shows us that youth-led actions can shift culture, policy, and practice in real ways. Then we also have Emmanuel Ojo. Emmanuel is a program manager at the Mercy Sarah Foundation. The experiences of young people and perspectives of adults who understand the power of leadership with young people. And then lastly, we do have Ekenia Chifamba. Ekenia is a founding director of Shamwari, Yemwanasikana. She's also at the forefront of empowering girls and young women in Zimbabwe. She also brings deep insight on how institutions can evolve and create more meaningful youth participation. So these are our amazing panelists today. They all represent each side of youth and adult partnerships. They have lived experiences, they have ideas, they have wisdom, they have mentorship. So I don't think I could think of any better team to lead us through this dialogue. Now, feel free to turn on your cameras, our speakers for today. So instead of the formal speeches, we are going to have a dialogue, and our youth and adult speakers will be asking questions directly, sharing honest reflections and building on each other's ideas. Think of it more of like less of a panel and more like maybe we are sitting down on a table and learning together. So we're going to begin with our first pair, that is Tracy and Emmanuel. Tracy, are you ready?
Yes, Shabellah, I'm ready. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off with a question maybe you would like Emmanuel to reflect on. Thank you. And before we go on, sorry, each speaker, each pair will have at least 20 minutes. So that means each speaker has 10 minutes. Okay,
For the
10.
two questions, yeah, right?
Yes, there are two questions, which means each one of you has 10 minutes for those questions. So please go ahead and start.
Okay. Washington, are you ready? Maybe you can just give us a hi.
All bases covered. I'm good to go.
The question is for me, Tracy.
Should I start with reading them out to you first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, Emmanuel, what do you think are the biggest challenges that young people face when it comes to trying to form equal partnerships with adults?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Ojo from Nigeria. I would like to speak on practical experiences between youths and adults when it comes to engagement. But before I proceed, first of all, I would like us to understand the dynamics that play in the life of a youth and in the life of an adult. If you're an adult, I believe you once had a time in your life when you were a youth and you've gone through some kind of experiences that shows the kind of relationships that youths have with adults. I want us to also understand that relationship levels. The first level of your relationship as a youth is that even while you are a youth, you still have subordinates, meaning among the youths, there are younger ones looking up to you, even as a youth. And then you also have your contemporaries, that's people in your class, possibly your age group, your classmates, or possibly your colleagues at work. And then you have your superiors, which are adults that are quite older than you in experiences and things like that. For every single person, you should be able to relate with these three levels of relationship around your life, and this matters a lot. One of the challenges I see among the youths is their inability to relate with their superiors. They easily relate with younger ones, they relate with their peers, but they find it difficult to relate with adults. And possibly because of the reactions they get most frequently from adults. And this begins actually from home. We can't leave out parenting on this matter. Parenting matters in the life of a child when he's growing into his youth stage. He finds it more easier to talk with adults when he's also free to talk with his parents from home. So sometimes we damage this ability in our youths and they are not able to communicate freely with adults. When they see adults, they tend to be scared, they tend to shy away, they tend to stay away from adults. But I believe every adult who have this understanding will always be open to youths and listening to them. This is one important part that is missing in our relationship lives. We are free to relate with the younger ones, our contemporaries, but we find it difficult to relate with the adults. But most especially, one thing that hinders relationship is the perception of inexperience. When adults have serious things to do, they tend to segregate. They tend to put the younger ones aside because of a perceived inexperience. They believe that the youth has nothing much to bring on the table of decision, and therefore the youth is actually sidelined or he's put aside when it comes to serious issues to discuss. The adult has this belief that all that the youth can do is when it's time to catch fun, or it's time to joke, or it's time to do something crazy. They bring in the youth to jump and to dance. But when it's time for serious matters, the youths are left aside. Another reason is the fear of failure. When adults are taking important decisions, they are scared of involving youths or giving them responsibilities that are actually sensitive because of the fear of failure. When youths are saddled with responsibility, sometimes because of instability in their attitude or in their character, they tend to fluctuate in their emotions, and therefore the adult is always scared of failure, giving responsibilities to the youths. The third is the power dynamics and the fear of losing relevance. Most of the times, the adults are afraid because they see the power, the energy, the ability, the dynamics of the youths. They have this power, they have this ability. So the adult is always scared of losing relevance. This, most of the times, is the reason why the adults tend to suppress the youths when it comes to giving them responsibility, because the youths are always smarter, they are faster, and they have this ego. They have this capacity to shine in the midst of any kind of gathering. So the adults are always scared of handing over responsibilities to them, especially responsibilities of leadership, because of the fear of losing relevance. This always happens because when you hand over the power to youths, it takes that maturity for a youth to be able to still find the adult relevant. They tend to be dominant. When the youth gets power, when the youth gets relevance, they tend to despise the adults, and they forget that this responsibility was handed over from an adult. Please, I would like to know if my time is up. You can give me a sign. I can see Shabellah is adjusting. Possibly my time is up.
You're still within your time, but you still have about 5 minutes for your second question. Please go ahead. Tracy, if you still had some more submissions, you can continue for at least 1 minute. Then can have Tracy again come in with maybe another question she would like to ask. Tracy, and Tracy, are you still on?
Sorry, that was a network hit. I think I'm done with what I was trying to say. So over to you, Tracy. Any reflection on what I've said, Tracy?
Yes, Emmanuel, I'm sorry, my power went off and it caused a glitch for a moment, but I'm back. So Emmanuel mentioned a key important thing of I feel like highlights the whole challenge on with adult partnerships, and that was power dynamics. I feel like that is the whole point why most adults are really scared of letting youth take the lead when it comes to meaningful engagement and creating meaningful change. Because it is a time where we see, an unprecedented number of youths questioning what has always been the norm and also going against the norm. And this creates some sort of fear among the adults, and most might term it as a case of poor upbringing or just youth being arrogant. But I feel like this really plays out in day-to-day relationships when it comes to creating change and relationship between youth and young people. So I feel like it's a point for us to ponder on and reflect on and go back to what Richard said in the beginning, that it doesn't mean that if somebody has a different opinion that one has to fit into a perceived opinion that you have of what should be going on. So mutual respect, I feel, is key when it comes to navigating these challenges, and people just knowing what to do and when to do it and how also to do it. So I feel like we go to the next question, Washington, which is, how do you see youth-adult partnerships contributing towards achieving the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, especially when it comes to sexual and reproductive health and rights? Washington, did you get me?
Sorry, Tracy.
It's Emmanuel.
Okay.
Oh, Emmanuel, did you
Sorry,
get me?
I just had the network. No, can you come again, please?
Okay, my next question is, what lessons have you learned about working with young people that truly surprised you?
Well, working with youth is very interesting because of, first of all, their power. They have this strength, physical strength, and they have this mental capacity to work for longer hours. I think this is one essential thing about the youth, and that's the energy that the youth brings on board on any responsibility you assign to the youths. I've seen the capacity of the youths also to multitask, just like I said earlier. You are able to engage the youths in several responsibilities, and sometimes they get it all done all at the same time. So for me, I think this is one thing about the youth that the adults cannot really achieve, because the adult somehow is a bit slow. The adult somehow is a bit weak. But unlike the youth is very energetic. You can give him a job and he gets it done in a shorter time than you expected. So for me, this is one thing that is so special for me about the youths. That's the energy. The next one is their openness to change. I think I also mentioned this earlier. The youth is very open to change. A youth can change so dynamically that you can be so surprised. You can give them a task and change it all at once, and you discover that he's still coping with the change. unlike an adult, they find it difficult to cope with changes because they gain a lot of stability quickly on a single task. Changing that task becomes difficult for them to adapt, unlike the youth that is very dynamic. And then lastly, I think one thing I also saw was their learning agility. A youth can learn in a very short time. You can assign them a task, you can assign them an entire work, and you discover a youth gets over it in a very short time. Unlike an adult, he dwells on the same activity for a long time, and yet he cannot really assimilate. He can't find a way out of the responsibility you've given him. But the youth actually gets to pick up as soon as possible. Even if it's a new application or maybe a new program, you discover a youth can really deliver, especially in technology. This is where the youth is always at his best. When it comes to technology, the youth can actually go through an application, learn the application, apply the application, and help you implement a program all at once. So for me, the power of the youth is the power of their energy and of their mental capacity, which they can hold on working for long hours and then to deliver a job as good as you want. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that thoughtful perspective. Tracy, do you have anything to reflect on before we flip it back to Emmanuel to ask if he's interested in anything?
Thank you, Emmanuel. I think everything that Emmanuel says resonates with all of us here, especially when it comes to, and I've seen this create like a sort of dialogue or something that people talk about, like, is it about the task or how the task is done? Like, if I'm to come to the office maybe 8 to 5 and I'm done with my task at 3, does that mean that I still have to stay in the office? You know, so that brings in like a really key factor of things that youth and adults need to work on and agree on and factor in the new dynamics, you know, when it comes to work and employment and delegation of tasks for youths by adults. Emmanuel, if you're ready, I am ready for you to answer the questions.
All right, my questions for you, Tracy. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right, where do you see the biggest opportunity for change in your community as regarding intergenerational relationship between the youth and the adults?
I feel
Where
like,
do you see the biggest opportunity for change?
I think the biggest is moving from inviting youth to projects to inviting youth to the decision-making table. I feel like here is where voices are heard, and it's where change happens, and it's where change are pushed. You know, for the longest time, youth have always been invited to forums just for tokenism and sometimes to just tick off boxes of, what are these called? Inclusivity when it comes to project engagement and project achieving, of course, project goals. But I feel the biggest opportunity is for youth being at the decision-making table and actually their voices being taken to account. Because sometimes you go to a table and you're not really listened to because of the perceived fear of failure or perceived inexperience, yet you bring in different ideas and dynamics of how to do things best. So I feel like the biggest thing would be for adults having youth as part and parcel of decision-making table, and also providing funding, or where it's not just like having voices, but also giving youth the opportunity to push ahead. And also in implementation of programs, also just giving youth the upper hand when it comes to positions, to also enable them bring out their thinking and dynamics on how to do things clearly without any reservations. And I feel like in our community, there's that opportunity also for localizing SDGs, which is a big opportunity for adults and youth partnerships, because youth know exactly what is happening on the ground, especially on our side where we work a lot with youth in prevention of GBV and all forms of violence against women and girls. We can see how youth are really taking accountability into practice, and that is both holding the duty bearers as well as the perpetrators of GBV accountable. And we see that it really comes in handy when we are coming to localizing these SDGs as well. And also in the movement, I feel like there's an opportunity for intergenerational co-leadership, just as I've spoken earlier about youth being at the decision-making table, because youth bring in the new ideas and strategies and navigating advocacy differently. And also we see strategic thinking from also the older generations, which is critical. Yeah.
All right, Tracy, I like the word co-leadership. I was actually trying to plan on asking you a question along that. I would like you to make more emphasis on closing, because when you look at the adults will usually leverage on his experiences, while the youth will leverage on their smartness. So they coming together and providing a co-leadership will actually give us the solution we're looking for. So I would like you to talk on the aspect of closing the gap between the youth and the adults. So what will you advise both adults and youth at the same time to do in closing this gap that is between the youth and the adults, so that they can work together, closing this gap to co-lead any function? Will you have a word for a youth or an adult?
Yes, and that comes down to navigating and understanding, first of all, what you want to achieve. You see, as youth, sometimes it becomes really difficult to navigate an adult partnership when you really do not know what you want and who you want to engage. You see, so when I've seen this, when it comes to navigating adult-dominated spaces, that when you come in with evidence, it really helps you to not just sound like somebody who's passionate about something, but actually somebody who is speaking from a point of information and knowledge and know what they want. And also another thing I've seen is just having like a pre-meeting strategy where you as youth can identify, you know, an adult beforehand when it comes to an engagement or a meeting where you want to push an agenda, and just engaging them in a one-on-one. And you can also just reference that when it comes to the meeting that will happen in general. So it creates that what is it called? That psychological preparedness, you know, for other adults to see, okay, so they engaged with this before, so it means that this is somebody who we can have in our discussion. Unfortunately, that's the case, but it shouldn't be that way. And I feel like one thing that will make it work is just having space for each other. Number one, youth having space for adults and their experiences, which sometimes we might not tend to agree with, but they usually come in handy because they know more because of their previous, they've been here for longer. And also for adults to understand that it's a different time that youths are living in, and what they did not used to question then can be questioned now. And that is the major thing, you know, that most adults might get irritated in brackets with. So I feel like understanding both sides and where each person is coming from, and creating the space where it is okay for holding different views, and finding a way in which these views can come in and create or achieve the goal that has been in place for both parties. I feel like that would make it work best.
All right, beautiful, Tracy. I know Shabellah is waiting for us, but finally, let me just ask you one more question. I think you've actually answered two of my questions all in one, but then I would like you to give a brief advice to a youth who has faced an embarrassing marginalization from a team of adults. Is either they have faced or they might likely face such situations in the future. What message will you have for a youth who faces such kind of situation? You've tried to join an adult on the board of leadership or on any platform of leadership, and you faced an embarrassing situation of marginalization. What word will you have for a youth so that he can improve on his resilience on his journey towards the path of leadership? I would like you to say a word or two for a youth.
I feel like with being young is very advantageous, you know, with being young, first of all, because you have the benefit of time. You have the benefit of doing it better, you see. And that alone, that thinking and understanding alone should give you the strength you need when it comes to facing marginalization or some sort of segregation as a youth, because that is not the only, do not view a certain setback as the end of it all. You see, there's always time for you to do better and do it best. First of all, I think it is critical for one to analyze where the rejection is coming from, number one. It could be, as you had mentioned before, there's fear of failure, or there's the power dynamics, or there's the resentment or no openness to change. So understanding that, or understanding the cause of the rejection, is one. And then number two, knowing how to go about it. So when you know why this has happened, then you can clearly see what avenues can you use to rise up from that. That may include raising it with maybe your boss or a former or a friend, and get a different feedback on what needs to be done. But the end goal should not be you sulking or now hiding, you know, because an adult has said something that to you might seem demeaning or embarrassing, because you always have time to do it better, you see. And also sometimes it might not work to directly confront the situation right there and then, you see. So that's why it's very critical to analyze, is it time for you to speak? Because also speaking up is okay, you know. If you feel offended, it's good to speak up, but it's good to also analyze, is this the place? Is this the time? Will I be heard? You see. And if not, then as I said before, you always have somebody you can refer that to, be it, because if it is a work thing or an engagement, I'm sure you can forward it to somebody else who might give better perspectives. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tracy and Emmanuel. What a rich exchange. I love how you both highlighted opportunity, power sharing, and trust. For the interest of time now, let's continue to our second pair, Washington and Ekenia. Washington, are you ready? Are you on? Is Washington on the call?
Washington has complained earlier that he's on a journey.
Okay. And I go ahead and ask Ekenia, if you're ready, I could ask you some few questions. It would help us answer. One is how do you see adult partnerships? What structure or institutional barriers have you seen that limit youth partnerships?
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be part of this conversation with young people. And this is a conversation that is really close to my heart because I have been in spaces where I've seen the challenges that young people face in meaningfully participating in certain events, decision-making spaces, and whether it's at work, learning institutions, our work that we do as civil society. And I often say that at some point in time, you know, I was a young person as well. Now I'm very young at heart, but we'll get to a point where we will not have that energy that my colleagues were talking about. We will not have the vibe. We would need somebody that would hold our hand to continue. So I've seen so many challenges, like I said, in terms of structures that are institutional, and these also participate, they limit youth participation in the different spheres. And I want to talk about just a few. I've seen that there are issues around legal and policy barriers where laws restrict our youth from participating. And we have seen our youth sometimes taking a huge step to actually demonstrate and say, because they are not yet 18, sometimes they're not allowed to vote. They are not allowed also to make certain decisions. And yet, these are the policies that will affect them in the near future. Remember, we are talking about the implementation of key SDGs. If we go to SDG 4, if we talk about SDG issues around their health, sex, sexuality, and also we can't run away from issues around climate change that we are facing right now. And we have been seeing cases of child marriages on the increase, human trafficking. There are a lot of issues that are happening. And there is that bias in institutions, like what my colleague Emmanuel earlier on said. There are youth that are not allowed to get involved or be involved in decision making. You know, at institutional level, usually we see management is made up of, you know, the adult men and women, and the young voices are not involved. And where I'm coming from, I always say, so I work with girls. Anything for the girls without the girls themselves is never for the girls, because their voices are not heard. And we often make decisions as well about the youth as if they're not there when we are doing our strategic planning, when we are conversing around communications, when we talk also about resource mobilization, yet they are the ones that are affected. And then there are socioeconomic factors as well. We are looking at inequalities, opportunities that youth can't get involved in. I have seen in Zimbabwe where there are opportunities in mining, opportunities in agriculture, and then it just benefits adults. And now the youths have been pushing, and we are seeing them as well, taking, you know, spaces, bringing their chairs in conversations where we're talking about mining, we're talking about agriculture, key conversations that affect them. And lastly, the issues of cultural norms. We have seen how societal attitudes undervalue youth contributions. In Zimbabwe, I am as shown as a Zulu person, and we have what we call the Dare, where the chief sit and their conversations in the society that are critical. When young people raise hands to contribute, you will realize that they are not given that opportunity. They are told you need to wait until you get to a certain age. And yet they are seeing young people not being included in lists where they're supposed to get inputs for agriculture, where they're supposed to get scholarships for school, where traditional leaders in some areas are actually taking charge of issues that are supposed to be handled by the courts. So there are a lot of issues that are involved.
Thank you so much, Ekenia. You mentioned of young people being involved and not being part of the decision making, and you reminded me of some theory I was reading. It's Roger Hart's ladder of participation, where at the lowest part of the ladder, the lower ranks, you find tokenism, decoration, and manipulation, which is happening all over the world for the young people. They are being encouraged to participate, but they are not being put to use. Then when you go up, as you climb the ladder, you find there is consultation, there is shared decisions, and when you go up at the toppest part of the ladder, the upper ranks, this is where youth are initiated in action with adult allies. And this is the true partnerships that we are working towards working and achieving. So maybe to go ahead and ask my last question. How do you see your role in intergenerational collaboration evolving as we work towards the SDGs?
So like I said, I'm working with young women, young girls, and we're looking at issues around sexual reproductive health rights, leadership, economic empowerment, and climate change. We are also looking at creating safe spaces for young women and girls who are survivors of abuse. And I have had an opportunity to be also in very high decision making spaces. I'm super excited also here, not just representing MenEngage Zimbabwe, but also MenEngage Africa, MenEngage Global, are the boards also that I sit on. And I see that young people are disadvantaged. We have spoken about a lot of issues that are affecting young people and depriving them of the spaces, the resources, the opportunities, and also the voice that is muchly needed from the young people. And recently I had a chance to go to an event. It was an intergenerational dialogue about leadership and the importance of leaving behind a legacy. And I have done quite a lot. I was sharing with the young women what I have done, because I believe that leadership is that torch that we pass on to each other, that baton stick when we're doing a relay. And it's the ability to actually hold each other's hand, knowing that at some point in time, they will need my wisdom, but I will need their energy and their expertise as times are evolving, and asking what is it that we have done, what have we put in place to ensure that collaboration is at the end of the day realized. And I'm happy the work that I do is in line with key SDGs, because at the end of the day, we want to see change, and we are that change that we want to see in the world. And I see there is that element of bringing in wisdom, bringing in innovation, and we want to break down the silos. And there's that element of like inclusive decision making, because most of the times, even in boards that we sit, we often see young people who come through, like what was said earlier on. It's an element of tokenism, but we don't really give them the chance to talk and all that. So we need to be at the same level. We need to tone down so that they also fit in. We have been doing like intergenerational dialogues at different levels. you know, the gaps that are there between us and the young people and their mothers, their guardians, around sex and sexuality. SDG 3, we want to talk about education and its importance. We want to talk about equality. We want to talk about the effects of climate change and how we can work as a collective. So the intergenerational dialogues have been happening not only with women, but also bringing in men as key allies in these conversations. What role do they play? Instead of seeing them as perpetrators, we see them as protectors, as change makers at different levels, policy makers as well. In Zimbabwe, we've had a number of challenges in terms of policies. Now, you know, everybody knows that you have a relationship with a below 18 young girl, you are going straight to prison and you're getting 10 years. You know that if you're pregnant, you have a second chance to actually go back to school, but creating safety nets for the kids that are left behind, which is also good. And economic empowerment also, we have set up like one-stop empowerment centers where we are saying Moro Shamwari, and that's our local language. That means you are welcome. Please come through. Whilst you are learning livelihood skills, you can get psychosocial support. We can do peer-to-peer support groups, which is amazing. And working with traditional and religious leaders, because these are key people in terms of changing the narrative around social norms. And we have been doing empowerment of the young people in their own spaces. You know, our Dandaros, an initiative that allows our young women and girls to know their rights, to walk through them, to talk them, to command them when they get into spaces, whether it's political, it's social, it's economic as well. And the boys as well, because people often ask, where are the boys? It's not a race. We're just trying to create equal spaces and opportunities. And then there's this multi-stakeholder approach that we are using that looks into sustainability. Our key government ministries, the Women Affairs, Social Development, we are working with those that do ICT because we want to move with the times, Ministry of Education and all, it's quite amazing. And then we have set up leadership hubs as well, where we have a special group of women in leadership in different spaces, which is called Ladder to Leadership. These women leaders actually do mentorship to young women and girls who want to be politicians, those who want to do STEM in science, so it's just different areas. And we have created a girls' rights collective, first of its kind, for organizations that are women-led organizations that are looking into the empowerment of young women and girls, so that it becomes difficult for them. You know, they don't know how to set up, how to fundraise, how to do policies, as a way of bridging that gap and creating a collaborative space. But as an individual as well, I have started a masterclass. When I turned 40, I said, what can I do to make a difference so that we bridge that gap? I bring in experts, women, men who want to make a difference and bridge that gap, all these issues that we were talking about. And then they hold the hands of the young people. And this is something that we are taking across the borders. If you look at our social media pages, you realize that we have been doing a lot of these courses: leadership, sexual reproductive health rights. We're looking at democracy and all. What we want is to ensure that it goes across the borders and becomes a best practice. And lastly, you know, bridging that gap and a collaborative effort is sitting on the MenEngage board as an alliance, bringing in the voices of young people, because they are the ones who know what challenges they're facing, what gaps are there. We need their energy, we need their expertise. We also need them to pass on the baton stick at some point in time. And I see this at the end of the day, allowing us to actually fully implement and realize the SDGs, because these are collective efforts. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much. Very, very powerful submission. I'm not going to comment on that because it was just self-explanatory. Thank you so much for that submission. Maybe I'm going to read out some questions for everyone to reflect on. You can answer in the chat. How do you see youth-adult partnerships contributing to achieving the SDGs? And the second question is, if you could redesign how institutions engage with youth, what's the first thing you'd change? This is for you young people. You can go ahead and answer in the chat and contribute to this conversation. Thank you so much, Ekenia. Thank you so much, Tracy. And thank you so much, Emmanuel, for those powerful and beautiful submissions. I'll hand over to Alex to take us through the next session, where we open our mics to the audience to give in some submission and contribution. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Shabellah, and thank you, Ekenia, Emmanuel, and Tracy. Really, really insightful discussion we had there. Unfortunately, because of the webinar features, there's no official chat function for everyone to submit their answers there. But we have had a few questions in the chat. I've seen a few people also answering the questions that other people asked, which is absolutely great as well. And we've also had lots of amazing answers for our survey. You should be able to see the answers now. I've shared them with the group, so please do have a look at those. There's some really, really fantastic ones there. But first, maybe we can go through some questions. And in fact, it's also possible if anyone wants to talk from the audience and have any contributions. I saw like the email for Pabio Berti. You raised your hand earlier and you answered the question that someone asked in the chat really beautifully. So would you be willing to come on and share your insights with us? I've given you permission to talk. So if you would like to, please feel free.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, your audio is a little bit fuzzy.
Are you getting me?
Yes, we can hear you. I saw yeah, feel free to introduce yourself, but I saw you answered the question about advice for young people who feel insecure participating in adult spaces very well. So I wondered if you wanted to give a little bit of your answer to express your answer verbally to everyone here.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for all of the amazing. For us in Liberia, yes, we do have a space, but the space is not really protected. Why also having young people to participate, it also comes from the culture of orientation. And then the issue about limited funding also limits more youth to participate because sometimes funding are only allowed for limited number. And then at the end of the day, many other young people do not have access and do not have the means to participate. So I was like saying that if we want more gap to be reduced, we need to be able to have flexible funding that could allow many other young people and other innovative programs to be sustained. Because take for example, for me, I lead a 300 plus young people in Liberia, Mumbawarwo, rural Mumbawarwo. We capacitate them in different spaces of education, empowerment, and reproductive health care. But because of the issue of donor criteria, we do not have the opportunity. But we are at the community working, except like-minded organization who sees our work come and partner. I must be thankful to Medical Liberia, Action in Liberia, the Women NGO Secretariat. They have also been able to support some of our activity, which is amazing. But how much many other innovative young people or young youth grouping will have the resilience to keep on doing their innovative work in the absence of funding. It becomes challenging. It becomes wearing. And those are the civil spaces sometimes limits people or discriminates people.
I was muted, sorry. This is a really important point. I see that Ekenia has raised her hand. So would you have any reflections you'd like to add on this, Ekenia, or answer this question?
Yeah, sure, Alex. Thank you so much. I think this is a very critical issue. I'm just going back to the assembly that we had like a few months ago. And, you know, these were safe spaces where we're having conversations about the challenges that are faced by the youth when fundraising. But then you also realize that because conversations are not done like openly, it's not just the youth that will be struggling. We also have like adults who have been in the game for a very long time who are also struggling. So I think the missing link here is what can be done by MenEngage, you know, as an alliance, as a collective, also look into these things. I'm looking at the gap that is there in terms of capacity building, information sharing, around resource mobilization. A lot of institutions do not have like even resource mobilization strategies. They don't know how to come up with one. They don't know how to do donor mapping. And these are webinars that we really need to take up to the young people and also even organizations that have been in the game for quite some time. I also think that we need to encourage, you know, it's difficult to do it as individuals, but, you know, it's something that can be done. As MenEngage Africa, we can actually arrange like a donor roundtable. We can actually do like online, depending on which donors we are targeting. Are they the usual development partners? Do we want to bring in corporates as well? Who exactly are we targeting? But bringing them and telling them these are the challenges that young people are facing, and we need to bring the young people also to the table to share the challenges that they are facing, and also encouraging consortiums, because at times people are not aware who's doing what. If I in Zimbabwe, and sometimes there's a call for proposal that allows me to partner with someone in South Africa or Nigeria, it's because we don't have constant communication. No, we've got WhatsApp groups, we've got those email groups that we can use. We need to utilize them more often, where we can actually share these calls and get to know more of the work that we do by sharing it on social media platforms, by sharing it on our newsletters. We get to know who's doing what, and then consortiums would be the best way to go sometimes, because we are leveraging on those that have been in the game for some time and those that have just joined in. So we need to seriously talk about these conversations, because we can't do our advocacy work. We are not able then at the end of the day to fully implement our strategy without the resources. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that insight, Kenya. I see Washington has rejoined us. I'm still mindful of time. We're going to have to wrap up in a second, but Washington, I see you have your hand raised. You had some technical difficulties before. So do you want to quickly say something? Then I'm going to quickly go through some of the survey answers, and then we're going to wrap up. Okay?
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Can you comfortable for me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Washington. Your audio is not so clear. Oh, I'm afraid, Washington, like it's pretty hard to hear you.
I can hear you from my end.
Okay, it sounds a bit better now. So do you want to go ahead and then, yeah, just to be mindful of time, we're almost wrapping up.
Oh, okay, no, that's fine. I apologize for the network challenge that I had faced. And since this is an intergenerational dialogue, I hope that it does not communicate wrong message. You see, the young people were given an opportunity, then sharp. So I sincerely apologize. But I just want to quick comment on how we can design institutions to better engage with young people. And I think it is of paramount importance that we shift from symbolic inclusion to genuine and sustainable co-leadership, something that Emmanuel and Tracy mentioned earlier, because here is a reality, Alex. Young people are constantly told that we are the leaders of tomorrow. if we are to be honest, tomorrow never comes. And if it does, it's already been planned, budgeted, and decided without us young people. And that is not partnership. Tracy said, I'm going to emphasize that performance, and it's tokenism. And I say this not just as a, but also as a gender justice champion and also founder of Youth and Period Poverty Movement, where we work daily with young girls who are excluded from dignity, from education, from simply because menstruation is taboo, underfunded and ignored in our institutions. We cannot address gender equality or sexual and reproductive health rights if institutions continue to treat us young people, especially young women, as temporary volunteers in a permanent crisis. Let me give you a real example. I was reading something in Uganda. Young people, they led a campaign for access to sexual and reproductive information in rural schools. Not only did they collect data, they helped design community education materials that are now being used by both NGOs and government health officers. And also in Kenya, I think you can agree with me to say, during COVID-19 epidemic, youth feminist groups didn't wait for permission. They stepped up. What did they do? They created mobile sexual and reproductive health rights services, running community WhatsApp hotlines, and responding faster than many formal institutions. Now, to me, that is not too much leadership. That is what I call leadership happening today, leadership happening now. And yet, the people who are designing policies like Agenda 2063, which is supposed to shape our futures, most of them, they will not even be there in 2063, and I will be there, and young people will be there, will be somewhere around 53. So if we don't shift how institutions engage youth now, we will keep talking about sustainable development without building a sustainable system of leadership succession, because real sustainability doesn't come from projects. It comes from partnerships across generations. Ekenia working together, Washington, Shamwari, Yemwanasikana, collaborating with the Youth and Period Poverty Movement. We are often told that wisdom comes with age. Yes, it does once, yes, whilst it comes with age, but we should not forget that even in the Bible, it was the king. It was not the king or the who took down Goliath. It was David, a teenager with vision, courage, and 5 small stones. So the question here that I would like to pose as I end my submission is to say, are institutions today willing to hand over youth with the sling, or they are still holding it while telling us to aim? So what's the opportunity here? Co-leadership models where youth and adults co-create policies and programs for the start. Accountability structures where young people can track funding, evaluate institutions, and have decision-making power, not just as youth days. And last but not least, investment in youth solutions, not just small grants, but real multi-year funding embedded in national budgets. I believe that the best vision of intergenerational partnership is not when the old generation steps aside, but when they step together with the new. Ekenia and Washington, we are not asking to replace anyone. We don't want to replace our elders. We are asking to build with you, not after you. And to the adults who are also joining this call, the next time you are designing a program, a budget, or a strategy, don't ask, where can we include young people? Instead, ask, which young person can lead this project? I rest my case for now, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Washington. I think it's a really, really poignant way to end the session. I think it's also reflected in like the survey answers we got, where a lot of people spoke about capacity strengthening, like limited knowledge sometimes, tokenism, but also how important it is to respect lived experiences and have more grant mobilization and communication between generations. So I think that really reflects a lot of the discussions that we had throughout the session. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we can't go through these anymore right now. So instead, I'm going to have to hand over to Ontlemetsa, who's going to close off the session for us. But of course, we will be sending some of these submissions to you afterwards, and you're free to look at them now and reflect on these contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alex and colleagues. Thank you so much for an interesting discussion. there have been a lot of moments when I was thinking, actually, that is such a powerful statement. And so what's going to happen from here is that ourselves as MenEngage Africa and Sonke Gender Justice, in collaboration with Yield Hub, are going to come up with an op-ed. We're going to feature key moments from this dialogue, and we're also going to be talking about the importance of youth-adult partnerships, as we have heard that come up a lot in today's dialogue. We also will be posting on our different social media platforms about follow-up opportunities, and we hope that this would be the beginning of, more joint intergenerational dialogues between ourselves and Yield Hub. It's been really interesting having you, and also the input that we have had from colleagues who have been a part of this dialogue. Very, very appreciative of your contribution. I'd like to thank our speakers. Thank you so much for your contributions. I'd like to thank each and every one of you as participants for being a part of this dialogue from the minute we started up until now. For those who have shared in the Q&A section of the dialogue, thank you very, very much. And the team at the back end who worked tirelessly to bring this dialogue together. I see you. I appreciate you. Thank you so, so much. And yes, please stay tuned. We will be posting the op-ed. We will also be having the post that came up from today, and also the submissions that you have made in our Q&A segment. So with that, thank you so much. I wish you a great rest of Thursday. I will now hand over to maybe one of our organizing team members to just say goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there's no better way to close off than how you just did on Tlemetsa. So yes, I just want to repeat, thank you everyone who attended. Thank you all of the speakers who participated. It's been a really fruitful discussion.
Yeah,
and we're really excited to see how we can go ahead. Yes.
Sorry. A special thank you to Shabellah, who was our moderator today. I'm sorry I made that omission, but I'll make it up to you on the sidelines. But thank you so much for leading our session. Thank you to Mila. Thank you to Richard. Thank you to you, Alex. Thank you to Emmanuel, Tracy, Washington, and Ekenia. It's been great.
Perfect. So thank you very, very much, everyone. As Ontla said, stay tuned, and I'll open up to the panel to say goodbye to the audience.
Thank you. Goodbye. Looking forward to more meaningful engagements. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Oh, Tracy, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm saying I wish we had those reactions on so that we could just send the emojis flying on the screen.
Yeah, I think the closest one you can do with your hands, maybe a heart or a thumbs up.
I don't think the permissions allow that.
I'm afraid not, but I'm sure everyone is sending them in spirit.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.